Monday night. The kids were already asleep in their rooms across the hall. Matt and Lynn sat in bed side by side, pillows tucked in. He was reading a book on the Civil War. She was editing a marketing report. With a quiet sigh, Matt closed the book and rolled over onto his side to look at his wife. He always liked the way the tip of her tongue stuck out slightly from under her lips when she was concentrating. Her pen hovered over the paper and she absent-mindedly tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Linny?" She answered without looking up. Matt waited, and after a moment she turned to look at him. "Do you love him?" Lynn froze and turned slightly pale. She stared at him silently. She just couldn't bring herself to play this game of asking who, or trying to lie. Matt deserved better than that. "No," she said. "So it's just about sex, then?" "Matt, she began, trying to hold his gaze, then lowered her eyes to the papers in her lap. "Yeah, I think it's all about sex. Flirting and then sex." "I see," he said. Silence. "I think I'd like you to sleep in the guest room," he said, his voice remaining calm and quiet. She nodded and got out of bed, slipping her feet into her slippers. She reached for the robe on the chair. "Unless, of course, you slept with him in this bed. If you did, I'll never sleep in it again." "No," she said. "I didn't do that." She wanted to say, "How could you think I would do such a thing?" But that would have been ridiculous given the circumstances. Without another word, Matt turned off the light on the night table and lowered his head onto the pillow, turning his back to her. Lynn stared at him for a moment, her face tense with pain. Then she quietly left the room, closing the door behind her. Friday night. When Matt got home, the house was full of delicious smells. He hung up his coat and Lynn came out of the kitchen to greet him with a smile, though she didn't dare come close. She was wearing one of her beautiful aprons that she wore when guests came over. "Beth and Jason are having dinner at the Frankels. I thought I'd cook us something nice tonight," she said, trying to keep a smile on her face. Matt looked into the dining room. The table was covered with a tablecloth with their nice china dishes and two of their best wine glasses on it. There were candles and cloth napkins in silver rings. Matt nodded. "It smells good. I'll go wash my hands and be down in a few minutes." When he returned, Lynn was just bringing in food from the kitchen. She served each of them a portion of fried chicken, along with potatoes and string beans. On one side in a pretty bowl was a salad with orange wedges. They sat down, and Lynn smiled radiantly at her husband, although there was visible tension on her face. "It looks very nice," Matt said. Then he stood up leisurely and climbed into his chair so that he towered over the table. While Lynn looked at him in confusion and then horror, he unbuttoned his pants and slowly, carefully, thoroughly peed all over the table. He doused the chicken, the garnish, the salad bowl, and the newly filled wine glasses. His urine soaked their plates and flooded the tablecloth. "Matt, what?" Lynn exclaimed, almost involuntarily. Her eyes were widened with shock and horror. Matt zipped up and got off the chair. He looked at Lynn intently. "Yes, I thought you might want to know what it's like to have someone urinate on something you care about, something you've put a lot of time, love, and effort into. I thought it might be an eye-opening experience." Lynn didn't answer anything, just looked at her husband, tears streaming down her cheeks. Matt went to the closet, took out his coat, and left the house. Sunday afternoon. "I asked for a transfer," she said. "Oh?" "I'm being transferred to the internal marketing department in a week, and I wanted it to happen as soon as possible. I'll be in a building on Union Street, away from where I am now." "And why did you ask for a transfer? I thought you liked the international division." "Because I wouldn't be anywhere near, around Douglas. I won't be in the same office anymore." He stopped raking leaves and turned to look at her standing next to him in her colorful fall sweater. "And why should that matter to me?" She looked both annoyed and hurt. "Because I'm not going out with him, that's all. I wanted you to know that." She turned back to the rake again. "Lynn, you've already told me it's over. Of course I take you at your word and trust you completely. Can you think of any reason why not?" She stomped her foot lightly and said, "Damn it, Matt. Do you really think your sarcasm is going to help?" Do you really think moving out of this office is going to make things better? Like no motels and no lunch hours and no breakfast meetings or client meetings outside the office? Like there aren't plenty of other men out there who would love to sleep with you to the point of memory loss? Matt's voice rose to angry, but he continued raking leaves into neat piles without looking at her. "Matt," she said in a thin, sad voice, "what else can I do? I'm trying to do everything I can, every way I know." She began to cry. "To show you how sorry I am, to make it up to you in some way." He turned to her again. "And you think there's some way to make it up to you? Some magic formula, just the right words, actions, or gestures, and it'll all be over? Look, Lynn, you're living in a fucking dream world." He turned away again, back to his rake. Monday night. Lynn heard footsteps in the hallway, and then Beth's head appeared in the doorway, sleepy and confused. "Mommy? Why are you sleeping in the guest room?" Although she was almost 6, she still spoke with a slight huff. "I stayed up late at work, honey, and here to keep Daddy out of the way." "Did you have a bad dream?" Beth nodded solemnly, and Lynn jumped off the bed to hug her. "Lie down with me, Bethy, you and Big Bear." She tucked her daughter and Bear with her under the covers and lay down beside her. 5 minutes later, Beth was sound asleep again, and Lynn gently took her and the bear cub in her arms and carried them to Beth's room. On her way to the guest bedroom, she suddenly changed her mind and headed for the master bedroom. The door was a few inches ajar and the room was dark. Lynn paused, trying to find the right words, but she was stopped by an unexpected sound. It was crying. "Matt," he cried softly, probably into his pillow. Lynn stood listening for a moment, then slowly turned away and walked back down the hallway to the guest bedroom. Wednesday morning. It was getting easier each day to sit in his office and work, to concentrate on what needed to be done. His thoughts still drifted off into painful distances, but no longer as often or for as long. It was obvious to his secretary, Bernice, that something was wrong, but she guessed he didn't want to talk about it and didn't ask anymore, only smiled sympathetically at him. At 10:50, he got up from his chair, walked to his door, and closed it. Then he took a dictionary from the bookshelf and put it on the table. He found the word he was looking for and read aloud the definition. "A cuckold is a man with an unfaithful wife." He sat back down. "I am a cuckold." He said it several times. The word seemed strange in his mouth. "I am a cuckold. I've been horned. She gave me horns." For a while he sat there looking at nothing. Then with a sigh, he put the dictionary aside and went back to work. Saturday afternoon. "For heaven's sake, Lynn, what the hell did you expect?" Lynn didn't answer anything, and her friend Arlene continued. They were sitting in Arlene's kitchen with 2 cups of coffee between them. "You sleep behind Matt's back with some other guy." Arlene saw Lynn cringe at the word, but continued. "And now you're surprised he's angry and hurt?" "I'm not surprised, Arlene. Does he know how long it's been going on?" Lynn shook her head. "I haven't a clue. I don't know how he found out at all or when. He doesn't want to. We haven't talked about it. Do you think if you told him it was only a few times, would it make a difference?" "Not to me, no." Lynn made a grimace. "I mean, if it had been the other way around, if he'd slept with some other woman, 5 times, 20, I'd still be torn apart. So don't think I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, not one bit. I just don't know what to do. I can't reach him, and I don't know what the hell to do." She lowered her eyes, stirring her coffee with a spoon, and Arlene watched her silently. 3 weeks later, Wednesday afternoon. "No," Matt said firmly, and then, a little quieter, "No, I don't want her to tell me about this." The therapist frowned slightly. She had short dark hair, almost a Beatles cut, and wore a brown corduroy sweater. Her name was Isabel Harshman. "Don't you think that would help you both? So you know why Lynn did what she did?" Matt looked at her without even glancing at his wife sitting next to him. "I think it might help Lynn, to get it all out of her soul. But I don't see how it can help me. Frankly, Dr. Harshman, I think I'm suffering enough as it is." Hesitating, Lynn said, I thought if I told you about it, about how it happened and why it happened, that, you'd would realize that I could never do anything like that again." Matt turned and looked at her. "Do you really believe that? Do you really think there's anything you can say to me that will restore my trust in you, Lynn, to make me feel like I won't have to worry about you for the rest of my life, wondering when the next time you'll jump into bed with another man?" Lynn looked down at her lap. Very quietly, she said, "No, Matt. I don't think there's anything I can say to make that happen." 2 months later, Thursday evening. "Oh, Matt, it's so beautiful here." She smiled broadly at him, squeezing his hand across the table. They were sitting at a table on the veranda overlooking the Caribbean Sea. The air was delightfully warm, and the red hue of sunset still hung in the sky. On the table between them was a pitcher of sangria and a plate of fried shrimp. "Beautiful, isn't it?" His answering smile didn't quite match hers. There was some tension on his face, perhaps around his eyes. He squeezed her hand in return for a few moments, then lifted his fork to spear another shrimp. "Thank you so much for agreeing to come down south with me." Lynn knew he was having trouble holding her gaze for longer than a moment. An hour later, they were making love in their hotel room. Later, they lay side by side, Matt on his back with his arms behind his head, and Lynn snuggled up to him with her head on his chest. "That was wonderful, baby," she murmured in a low, relaxed voice, and Matt reached down to gently stroke her back. She seemed almost asleep, but then she lifted her head to look up at him. "Are you making me your bitch?" she asked playfully. Matt looked at her, his brow furrowed slightly. He sighed. "When we do it in the missionary position, He looked away. "I watch your face, your expression, and I can't stop seeing you with him, imagining you looking up at him, just as—" Matt didn't finish the sentence. They lay motionless, and Lynn suddenly felt a chill. After a few minutes, Matt got up, pulled on shorts and a t-shirt, put on sandals, and left the room. 7 weeks later, Saturday night. They worked in silence most of the time, standing in front of bookshelves on opposite sides of the room. Lynn was sorting out their CDs and Matt was doing the books. He said, "Shall I keep the Dickens novels? I've read them all." "As you like. Take them if you want them. I'm not going to read them." She pulled out another handful of CDs and put the ones that belonged to Matt on the small stack beside her, then turned and looked at him. She watched the muscles in his back move under his tank top, how every movement he made was smooth and precise. It was all so familiar, it brought tears to her eyes. In a low voice, she said, "You know this isn't what I want. I've never wanted this." Matt froze for a moment, but didn't turn around. He held back his reply and turned back to his books. He didn't need words. They both knew what he would say. 5 weeks later, Sunday night. "Mommy! Mommy!" screamed Beth and Jason, jumping out of Matt's car and running into the house to hug her, their overnight bags left abandoned on the ground. Both started talking at once. They told her about the zoo, how the giraffes were their favorite. "They have such long necks," and that Daddy had bought cotton candy for each of them. Then, finished with their greetings, they ran past her into the living room and turned on the TV. Matt smiled as he walked toward the house, carrying the bags the kids had dropped off. Lynn smiled back. "Seemed to like the zoo." I still couldn't tell if they were excited or terrified. We got very close to the giraffes. They towered over the wall right above our heads, and they also liked the giant tortoises. It was a nice day. They chatted for another minute or two. Lynn said, "Would you like to come in for a cup of coffee? The coffee pot is on the stove." No thanks," he said, feeling a little awkward. "I really should get going." "Okay," Lynn said, trying to keep a smile on her face. "I'll see you Wednesday night," he said, and turned to his car. She stood watching him until the Taurus reached the end of the street and turned left, out of sight. 4 months later, Monday evening. Beth sat at the kitchen table and colored while Lynn cooked dinner. Jason was sitting on the floor putting together his favorite wooden compound picture puzzle for the 500th time. It was a multicolored clown and had 17 pieces. "Mommy, are friends supposed to kiss?" Beth looked at her mother expectantly. Lynn turned to look at her. "I don't know, dear. What do you mean by that?" "Well, I never kiss Artie or Melissa or my school friends." She made a grimace. "It's so disgusting kissing Artie. But we met a friend of Daddy's and they kiss all the time." Jason looked up from his puzzle. "Angela's nice," he said. "Yeah, she's nice. She made us hot dogs and macaroni and cheese." Jason interrupted. Then he lost interest in the conversation and went back to his puzzle. "Oh, and she also said that next time we could go out for ice cream. But she and Daddy keep kissing, you know, like you and Daddy used to do. Do friends always kiss?" Lynn squeezed her eyes tightly shut for a moment. Then she opened them and smiled at Beth. "Well, honey, some friends kiss, and some don't. It all depends on the circumstances. But kids your age don't kiss their friends, so you don't have to." "Okay," Beth nodded and went back to her coloring. She was making a duck, although it looked a lot like a stegosaurus. "Dinner?" Lynn called out. "Go wash your hands." When the children returned to the table, she said, "At least 2 pieces of broccoli each. Otherwise, there will be no dessert tonight." She watched them put ketchup on their hamburgers and start eating them. Then she went back into her bedroom and closed the door. She sat down in the chair by her bed, put her face in her hands, and cried,